Let's talk about God-given rights, because if you think this is just politics, you're missing the whole game. America only works if rights come from God, or at least from something higher than government, because the minute rights come from government, they can be edited, redefined, suspended, and updated whenever the people in power feel like it. That's how free countries quietly become permission-based societies. Now let me make this simple. The Bill of Rights isn't a list of gifts from Washington. It's a list of things Washington is forbidden to touch. That's what people mean by God-given rights or natural rights. You have them because you're human. Government doesn't create them. Government is supposed to recognize them and stay in its lane. So what changed? Over time, America shifted from a shared public assumption of God to a culture where God is more private, more individualized, and more optional. And when the idea of God gets pushed out of public life, something else rushes in to fill the vacuum. Not always science, not always reason. A lot of the time, it's just government. Here's the first big shift. When God becomes private, rights become negotiable. In early America, people disagreed on doctrine. But the idea of a creator and moral law was common language. So when someone said rights, they meant rights that exist above politics. But when God becomes a personal preference instead of a shared reference point, rights start getting grounded in court rulings, legislation, and social consensus. And consensus changes. Courts change. Legislatures change. So if rights are grounded in those things, then rights can change too. Now let's talk about one of the biggest confusions in modern America. People have been trained to think the First Amendment means freedom from religion. But the actual right is freedom of religion. Separation of church and state is a mechanism. It's a legal guardrail to prevent government from creating an official church. It was never supposed to mean scrub God from public life, treat faith like a contaminant, and act like religious people have to check their beliefs at the door. When that happens, you don't get neutrality. You get a new state religion, whatever the government-approved moral fashion is at the moment. Now let's talk about how institutions can help shift the meaning of rights over time. Start with public schools. Public schools are government institutions, so they shape how kids understand rights. If schools teach that religion is strictly private, kids grow up thinking God-given rights is just a religious slogan. Then the only real rights are the ones the state recognizes. And once you accept that, you're already halfway to this idea. Rights are privileges, and privileges come with conditions. That's the opposite of the Bill of Rights. Now let's talk about mass immigration, legal and illegal. This is where people get emotional, so let's be precise. Immigration doesn't automatically erase American values. But mass immigration without serious assimilation expectations can weaken shared civic assumptions, especially the uniquely American idea that government is limited and rights are pre-existing. Many people come from countries where rights are treated like permissions granted by the state. If America stops teaching its own framework, negative rights, limited government, constitutional restraints, then the culture drifts. Not because immigrants are evil, because the host country stopped insisting on its own principles. And on the illegal side, you get another pressure point. When leaders refuse to enforce the law consistently, they create complicated human situations, then use those situations to argue that enforcement itself is inhumane. That turns the rule of law into a vibes contest. And once law becomes vibes, rights become vibes too. Here's the warning, and this is the whole episode. When God-given rights become government-granted rights, you don't lose freedom all at once. You lose it in tiny, reasonable-sounding steps. For your safety, to protect democracy, to stop misinformation, to reduce harm, to promote equity. And every time, government expands, and the citizen shrinks. So where does Trump fit? This is why Trump's approach matters, whether you like his personality or not. Because the policy direction is basically a firewall against the permission-based society. First, border enforcement is sovereignty. A nation that cannot control its borders cannot control its laws. And a nation that cannot control its laws cannot protect its citizens' rights. Enforcing immigration law isn't hate. It's the baseline requirement for self-government. Second, law and order is the precondition for liberty. The Bill of Rights assumes a government strong enough to enforce the law, but limited enough not to abuse it. When leaders tolerate disorder, selective enforcement, and two-tier justice, the public eventually begs for control. And that's when governments historically take more power. Restoring consistent enforcement is how you prevent the panic that leads to crackdowns. Third, free speech. If the culture shifts to speech as violence and disagreement as harm, the First Amendment becomes a dead letter. Pushing back on censorship culture, compelled speech, and bureaucratic intimidation isn't just politics. It's defending the idea that rights don't come from HR departments, school boards, or federal agencies. Now, here's the line. If rights come from God, government is the employee. If rights come from government, government is the owner. And the entire American experiment depends on never letting that switch happen. That's the real fight, not left versus right. God-given rights versus government-granted permissions. God bless America, and God bless Trump.